I do believe that India's time in AI is now. Mostly people are obsessed with where is India's LLM, where is India's ChatGPT. But I think the real AI challenge in India is how do you deliver 2 rupees a minute in the case of voice AI at 40% margin? And the AI should be able to speak 30 languages simultaneously very well. This is a uniquely Indian challenge. India is a price sensitive market. You have to do cost innovation. India probably makes per capita more phone calls than anybody else in the world. So we are a MVNO, mobile virtual network operator. We are also the largest call server in India.
A lot of companies are now flipping back. Let's say MoEngage is flipping back, CleverTap is flipping back, Capillary just flipped back. What is your thought process on listing on India market? Shivku, welcome again on the Neon Show podcast. So glad to have you back again.
Thank you so much for having me back here. You've called me for the second time, so I presume
The first one
I say important things.
Yeah, the first one went really well, right? And now I want to start, by if you can give a recap of what Exotel is, what category you play into our audience, and then we can maybe dive into the journey after COVID of Exotel first.
That makes sense because we've already recorded prior to COVID. I think
Yeah.
in the previous podcast we've already covered. So we're in the business of helping brands connect with their audience, their customers. So we deliver technologies using which companies can communicate, engage with their users, audience, customers. So we are operating in the customer engagement, customer interaction space. So it sort of manifests itself in a few ways. So we are a MVNO, mobile virtual network operator. We are also the largest call server in India, other than the telcos, and most likely in the top 10 in the world. We process almost about 2 billion calls a month. So if, let's say, your delivery executive is calling, your driver is calling, sometimes the teacher and the student is talking, doctor and patient is talking, there is a very high chance that all of that is actually powered by Exotel. So this is what we call as the platform business, sometimes CPaaS, communication platform as a service, sometimes cloud telephony, sometimes cloud voice. So these are all the different terminologies that we use to describe this tech. Then through an acquisition of a company called Ameo, we also now got a contact center software, and we made this software integrate on top of the platform. And then now we are serving a lot of enterprises using that contact center software. Now, just to put some perspective, people usually get confused about what a contact center software is. They think it's a BPO. We are not a BPO. We don't provide the bodies or the people that actually chat or make these phone calls. Think of contact center as the OG software. If you were to imagine, let's say in the 60s or 70s, there was a time when phone call was the only way in which you could communicate with people remotely. And so contact center was a software that was built for managing phone calls. That's where it started. And nowadays people tend to think of CRM as something that everybody knows, but CRM actually sort of came up with the internet, and it is synonymous with email. But contact center software has actually existed even before that. So that's what a contact center software is. So it works with the CRM in many cases. Sometimes it's the primary owner of voice. Sometimes we can also bring the voice into CRM through our APIs. But these are the several ways in which contact centers and CRMs kind of work with each other. But suffices to say that all of this is in the CX space, customer experience space. We usually work on use cases like sales and onboarding, collections, service calls, customer service calls. Then there is another segment called RM Connect, Relationship Manager Connect. Think of it as the person who will now, your broker who's helping you trade, or your savings bank account relationship manager from the bank. So these are some of the other use cases. So I think these are the broad use cases that we operate in. Our AI journey also started through an acquisition of a company called Cogno AI, which is which used to be a leading brand in giving chatbots and a few other products in the BFSI space. So that was a starting point. Of course, this is the pre-generative AI era. And then over time, we've also now built our own agentic stack. And now we offer voicebots, AI-generated quality assurance, agent assist. So these are all some of the products that we have. But broadly, you can think of it as set of all technologies in the customer interaction, customer engagement space.
Yeah. So just to recap the journey, right? Exotel started roughly in 2011, 2012 kind of time frame. 2012 you raised like 2.5 crores from Bloom and Mumbai Angels, right? Back then. And then the next 8 years there was zero funding for the company, right? COVID hit, you were at 10 million ARR then, and suddenly the revenue dropped to 5 million. I remember that. And then A91 invested in the company, and I think that was a pivotal moment for the company once, because also what had happened is during the COVID, uh, the rise of calls through Exotel and the category became very prominent.
Correct.
Right. And then there was, once the money started pouring in, you raised, I think, $100 million in a matter of two to 3 years.
Correct.
Right. And then you also acquired two companies, Amayu and Cogno AI, during that period of time. So describe the journey, right? After COVID, right? You also shared that there was a bunch of layoffs during that period, right? And how has the journey come till now? What ballpark revenue range you are at today?
Absolutely. So, what happened during COVID was, of course, because of the lockdowns, we actually had a lot of reliance on third-party logistics, e-commerce, cabs, food tech. All of that, of course, came to a grinding halt, right? So naturally, all the calls that these companies were making also stopped. So our revenues became half, and like you rightly mentioned, we were a self-funded, profitable, bootstrapped company up until then. So then that gives me no choice but to cut costs because I don't have the money to run the show anymore. So we had to almost let go of 30 to 35% of our employees at that point in time. It was just very painful because first of all there is COVID, and then on top of it you are now also asking people to go. And of course, we tried as much as we can to keep them because times were uncertain. We don't know how people will get a job, when they will get a job. So that was a really tough time. But even during that time, I and my team were actually extremely busy because several governmental organizations wanted a number where they can now give information about COVID. Many NGOs wanted ways to disseminate information about where food is available, where work is available, and those kinds of things. So, and oftentimes we actually had to do some of these things even without asking for money. So those 21 days, those 1.5, 2 months actually were one of the busiest period of my life because I was just helping, and this was my way of contributing back to the society. So that's what we were doing, and the team was doing. So we were actually working very tirelessly. So then post that, what happened was then it became clear that everything's going to be digital. So people who were buying from physical stores obviously now started buying online. Payments were becoming digital. So naturally, remote communication became quite important. And so our SMS volumes, call volumes, all of those things started skyrocketing. And that's really when A91 sort of came in. And I would say that it's a combination of right place at the right time. So I used to jokingly say that people usually ask me, why is it that you've been building this business for so long? And, how did you not ever think of, just shutting shop and going home? So I tell them that actually there are two issues. One, I don't know how to quit. I don't know what that involves. Like, what exactly is the process where you, okay, now today is the day when I'm going home, right? Like, you are the one who started the company. How can you go? So that's one. I don't know how to do that. And secondly, I said that if you waited long enough, you can even see a supernova happening. And in a way, something like that happened for Exotel. So I think we were just waiting for our moment to arrive, and I think that moment arrived then. And so that was one part. And the second part is, of course, we had to take advantage of it. So like I was saying, we actually were working even harder through and during COVID, even though our revenues were down, or we had to let go of people and things like that. But customers are actually coming after us and asking us for our services became even more mainstay. Even very large banks immediately wanted to do work from home, immediately wanted to make calls remotely. And so all of that happened. So I think, so that's when A91 came in. So we did round 1, round 2. Actually, we did 4 rounds in a period of about 18 months. Just in the year of 2021, I did 2 acquisitions and 3 rounds. And it was quite an exciting time. The story of Amayu itself is also fascinating. It actually did not happen during COVID. It actually started even before. So one of the largest use cases of a cloud voice platform is contact centers applications. And so I went to my team and I said, look, we need to now build this because we are doing a few use cases, but this is actually one of the largest use cases. And my team came back and gave me a 2-year time frame for building out that product, partly because we were self-funded, and so there was only so many engineers we had, and so then I didn't have the patience to wait for that long. So then I started speaking with Sachin Bhatia. They were actually thinking about how to now do a little bit of cloud voice. They had internally started their own CPaaS equivalent and things like that. So I think it was sort of like, hey, both of us sort of agreed that the world is moving towards the cloud. Contact center will move to the cloud. For that, the voice platform also has to be there. And so the synergy was quite obvious. But the transaction itself was, of course, much harder than what we anticipated. Both the companies didn't really have, at that point in time, large backers with a lot of money. So we had to go and raise, which means we had to now convince somebody. But we hadn't raised for 8 years. They hadn't raised for almost 4-5 years. Growth rates were, if you remember last time, I also spoke about, there are companies that say go big or go home.
Yeah.
This 40% or 35% growth rate is a difficult place to be.
Yeah.
Because it's neither big, you're not growing earth-shatteringly well, but it's not bad at all, right? 35, who doesn't want 35% growth? Go ahead.
So I just wanted to ask one more thing during this time. How much revenue once, and you can share the process of this acquisition. How did it happen? At what round? Like, did it happen immediately after A91? Or after, how much revenue did Ameo bring in?
Sure. So where I was going with this was we were actually having these conversations even prior to COVID. And Sachin and I took a proposal to basically say we will do an equity swap without actually raising any money. All the founders were aligned, but unfortunately we weren't able to agree upon what's the valuation at which we will do the swap. And after a little bit of back and forth, I realized, actually both of us realized, there's no way this is happening without money on the table. So then that conversation stopped, and then they went their way and we went our way. Then, of course, I went ahead and raised my first mini round with A91. And that gave me a little bit of confidence that, okay, so now we have some backers. And then so I proposed it to our investors. They were pleased with the story. And then by that time, what had happened was Ameo had already started speaking to Route Mobile, amongst other players. And Route Mobile had given them an offer, and they were actually almost going to acquire. And in fact, the other co-founder in Ameo was in favor of that deal. And so I was just walking around in my balcony one day and I thought, should I call him? Should I not call him? So I called him up and I said, look, why don't we restart the conversation? And then he said, it's too late. We are already, almost going to sign the papers with Route Mobile.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, what do I do now? And then he also sort of jokingly said, hey, you raised like 40 crores so far. Do you really think you have the money to acquire Ameo?
Yeah.
So then I was like, that's right. So what do we do? But I still didn't stop. So I still pursued. I called their investor. I called the other co-founder. Then I said, I'll come to Delhi and I'll catch up with you guys. So I went there and I spoke to them. So fortunately for us and hard luck for Route Mobile, eventually somehow I grabbed the deal out of...
Did you make a better offer than Route Mobile?
We did make a better offer, not so much in terms of... so basically there were a lot of riders in the Route Mobile deal. So you had to make so much profit. The payment was staggered and things like that. In our case, it was a very clean, here's the money, take it and go. Because in my case, actually, I was looking for product synergies a lot. Whereas in Route Mobile's case, I think it was more of a M&A inorganic strategy. So I think the 2 + 2 greater than 4 is far higher for us than it was for Route Mobile at that point in time. So I think that's really what swayed Sachin also. Eventually, we matched the offer. Maybe it was a better offer in terms of how quickly they got the money and how cleanly they got the money. But the offer itself was sort of in that ballpark. I think that sort of swayed the deal. And last minute, somehow we got the deal, and life's been glorious after that.
And how much, if you can share roughly, revenue did it add to Exotel after the M&A?
So I think they would have probably brought about 100 crores of revenue.
Wow.
And we were at about 120-ish crores of revenue at that point in time.
This is 6 months after A91 kind of
Correct.
round.
Correct.
Once you had bounced back to the original revenues.
Correct. So we went to almost 50 crores and then we came back to almost 120 crores.
Yeah.
So that was the broad contours, and so that happened. I was obviously speaking to a bunch of other investors at that point in time. So then we had to do a Series C to fund this acquisition. Then there was another Series D, and then naturally I got more excited and I said, okay, next we have to bring in AI into the mix, and that's how Cogno AI happened.
Sure.
And then so that was Series D. Of course, Cogno AI was a much smaller startup, but AMI was actually a very interesting case study. In fact, I believe there has been a Harvard or one of these MBA case studies that was written on. I have not seen it, and Avinash also had written a long post about this. So the interesting piece is that actually these two companies are almost similar in size in terms of revenue and profits. And in fact, to tell you the truth, Amio actually had double the number of people compared to Exotel. So it was a very weird. Is it a merger? Is it an acquisition? Who's buying? Who's selling? That sort of. Sachin had actually flipped over his stake, so he's actually our co-founder now.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
So he didn't take cash out from the deal. The rest of the co-founders took cash.
Correct. So it's a very interesting deal, and I would say that after about 3 years, so 2 interesting points. My team originally had said they'll take 2 years to build the contact center. Actually, we took 3 years to integrate Amio contact center into Exotel.
Was the revenue stayed intact during that journey, the Amio revenue?
So that's another very interesting conversation. So in most acquisitions, what happens when an acquisition happens is that the revenue actually tanks because new people are coming in, processes are changing, there is uncertainty, culture is changing, and so naturally Amio's revenue went down, and then at some point we realized, oh shit, what are we doing here? We need to support our customers, and then I start focusing on it, everybody starts focusing on it, and then the revenue start coming up. Same exact thing happened with Cogno. So there was a point when all our customers were shouting, culture was changing, then I had to start getting my hands dirty, again it came up. What I didn't anticipate was that the Exotel business also actually went through the same S-curve while we were doing all of this. So
you came down from 120 crores again.
Correct. Because we were now so focused on trying to make contact center work, trying to make AI work, our original business actually also sort of went. So I think there are 3 S-curves that sort of went. Fortunately, they were spaced out a little bit, so it didn't all happen right now. But right now, of course, all of them are in the uptrack. Also because we've now sort of unified the culture and people, and the systems are also integrated. So all of that's happened. So right now, it's all sort of going up.
So 90% of the M&As don't work out historically. Tell us, how did you make it work despite of these S-curves?
See, actually, I don't know why these things don't work. Maybe, I don't know. But I'll tell you that I was actually quite clear why. So this was not like I'm going to add inorganic revenue or I'm going to acquire customers. None of that, right? So there was actually very clear product synergies that I thought will add value to customers when we did this, right? So I think, and that is exactly what we ended up doing also. So in that sense, the technology synergy was very, very strong.
Did you wanted to sell the Amio product to your existing customers?
Both ways. So, I mean, ultimately, what we wanted to do was to be India's first CCaaS. There was no CCaaS. Technically, even today, there is no CCaaS. CCaaS is contact center as a service. Think of it as SaaSifying contact center product. So, as I told you, contact center business existed even before SaaS came in.
Yeah.
So, what is the equivalent of contact center software business in the SaaS world? That is CCaaS. So, obviously in the US, people were buying CCaaS. So, in India, people had to still buy some wires, talk to telcos, put up some boxes. This was the way people are setting up contact centers, and we wanted to change that. And it is happening. And so in this sense, Exotel is actually a very unique company. So, we have bits and pieces of our business competing with other companies, but on the whole, what Exotel offers, actually nobody else offers. And this was by design. And this was a differentiation that I wanted to bring to the table for our customers. And so I would say that it hasn't been easy though. So there were lots of churns, culture mismatches, clashes, fights, people leaving. I actually making a number of mistakes without understanding why things are the way they are. I changed some processes here, some people there, because it didn't make sense to me. So all of those mistakes were made. And I think some of this is responsible for those S-curves. But I'm happy to say that last quarter, we actually booked the highest ever contact center orders in the history of actually both the companies.
Okay.
So certainly it's working now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So now, having said all of this, I think I hadn't done any acquisition before this, so I only thought of what are all the things, the way it's going to work. I never sat and wrote down what are all the risks and how it's going to affect us. But many of them came to affect us. So sitting here, I would say that acquisitions are not easy. It's very hard. Only because I had the founder energy and because it was my idea, my and Sachin's idea, I think we gave it all to make it work. Otherwise, it's actually non-trivial to make some of these things work. So now I feel like unless there is a really good reason, I would probably not acquire randomly anymore.
And
because it's a lot of work.
Can you tell us why it's so hard to make it work?
So, ultimately, of course, people is the thing. But it's not just that, it's not like I'm just saying that, there are two sets of teams and then they have to come together. It's not just that. I think the amount of learning curve that everybody has to go through while continuing to support both the businesses and think about how the together world is going to happen into the future. Some of these things actually take a lot of time and old habits die hard. So Exotel is at that point in time was a 10, 11-year-old company. Ameo was a 14, 15-year-old company, right? So you go and tell somebody, hey, why are you doing this? They don't know. You are now going and telling them, okay, change it like this. Then they are like, no. So it's very hard. It's very hard to change people on their ways. That's the reason why I think it's hard. What's interesting is that our margin profile has actually improved over time. So consequently, our profitability has also improved over time. So and this has happened because of a little bit of a change in the mix of business that we are getting. So I think during and through COVID, we sold a lot of SMS and WhatsApp and that kind of stuff. Some of these things actually aren't that margin accretive. But now we are selling a lot more AI, a lot more contact center. Of course, voice is our mainstay business. Some of this is a little bit more margin accretive. And so we may not have actually grown that rapidly when you talk in revenue terms, but actually we've been giving almost 20% type CAGR growth in the last 2 years. On the gross margins, and so consequently we are now again profitable.
Yeah, and can you tell us more about on what the core AI products are that you are offering to the customers?
So actually there are several things that we are doing with AI. Usually in most other companies when they talk about AI, there are some internal use cases that they focus on. Naturally they will get people to write code using agent, which we are also doing almost. If I'm not wrong, about 20 to 25% of our code is now, even today, is actually being written by AI. Yesterday, I got the happy news that for the first time in our history, my CTO told me whatever was supposed to release in October, they are going to release it in August. I'm like, how is that possible? This has never happened. And of course, the answer is AI. So some of that is happening. The second thing that most companies will also end up doing is enterprise search. Think of it as like a Glean ish. So how do we now get access to information about the company in the hands of all the employees? So we are working on top of Gemini for that. So that's happening. So these are the two internal facing things that we are doing like every other company. But we are actually impacted by AI in a much larger way than other companies because we are in the CX space. As you know, customer service, contact centers, these are the places where AI's impact is the largest. And one of the first use cases that people are sort of going after.
People don't want humans to make call. Now AI agent can make end-to-end call because they can understand on the context.
That's right.
What other human is saying in whatever language is saying.
Correct. Absolutely right. So we actually have to now redesign, rethink what our products are going to be into the future itself. So naturally we started with some of the basic things. So there's a product called Agent Assist, which now uses AI, crawls the knowledge base. And then as the conversations are happening either on chat or on voice, then there are pop-ups that now says, hey, here's the answer to the question that the customer is asking, etc. So that's called Agent Assist. Then there is a product that we have called CQA, Conversational Quality Analysis, which itself can be actually used in multiple ways. But one standard way in which people are using it is, has the agent now greeted the customer well? Or has he or she now done these 10 things that there's checklist that they're supposed to do? Earlier, people used to actually sit and listen to these calls, regulatory reasons, SOP reasons. And they used to cover about 2 to 5% of the calls, which itself was very expensive. Now, obviously, AI can now listen into all these calls simultaneously. And then the implications are actually slowly, you can now start thinking what more you can do, right? So actually voice of customer or customer feedback is no longer necessary. You can now run generative AI on all these calls, and you will automatically now know. Earlier, you used to ask for CSAT and NPS. All of those things are not required. You can actually pretty much build your product roadmap by just listening into these calls, and we can get AI to now build the product roadmap for you. The MIS is, the control center that, let's say, the executives want to see. So what is our customer saying? What is our customer thinking about our brand? All of that can actually be gleaned from the customer calls. So there are several of these kinds of use cases that we are now powering using our CQA product. Then there is the voice bot, which is the one that everybody keeps talking about. So we have deployed. So one of our voice bot agents, collections agent, about 2-3 months ago, I got to know that has actually collected almost 3 crores of rupees in a month for one of the NBFCs, completely automated. So just take a minute to just think about it, right? Completely automated, no human is involved. There is a software that's now helping collect 3 crores in a month. I think that was just, when I heard it, I was first of all very happy, and secondly, it's fascinating that it's actually, I mean, we only wrote the code, so I know what it does, but it's still hard to believe.
But the interesting thing is, the AI you are implementing for your customers is eating your own business.
Correct. So it's a little bit, we are and we are not. I'll tell you what I mean by that. So turns out that so broadly, I think the total number of contact center seats will come down. My estimation is that it will come down by about 80% over the course of 3 to 5 years. By the way, time frames are actually anybody's guess. As you know, in AI, things are changing every day. So God knows. I'm just telling you my intuition right now. Now, what, however, happens is that, so let's say roughly a contact center agent is about 30,000 rupees you're paying that person a month. The company will now, when they replace that seat with AI, they will want almost 70% of that to flow through their profits. So it's not like you can now offer AI and expect to actually charge 30,000 rupees a month, because why will they now pay the same 30,000 rupees to you when they have to also have some benefit, right? So this is what the world generally calls a salary TAM. Now, so let's say 70% of that is retained by the company, let's say Unilever. The remaining 30%, which is about 6 to 9,000 rupees, is what is actually available for software or AI.
Yeah.
So in this 9,000 rupees, I think almost 60% of it will go to foundational models, LLMs, think OpenAI, think Google, think cloud for hosting, all of that. So the remaining 40% is what will be available for applied AI companies such as ourselves. So we are not a foundational research company, right? We are an applied AI company. So roughly about 2,000, 2,400 rupees extra you're getting out of that subsegment back to us. So if you do the math, although the number of seats is reducing to almost 20%, because you're getting this extra, let's say roughly 2 rupees a minute per conversation on AI, it actually ends up becoming a larger deal than where you started. So you start with 100 seats, you go to 20 seats, but you do AI conversations, your bill will now increase from, let's say you start with 1 lakh MRR, you'll actually go to about 5 lakhs MRR. So we find ourselves in a really interesting situation. It's a very exciting situation because contact center seats are declining, but actually Exotel's prospects become even brighter going forward.
Okay. And how much percentage of you believe that the current contact centers that we have will be completely replaced by AI in the future?
See, there'll be these new processes that people are now starting off, which I think it is possible for people to imagine it completely using AI. But some of these older processes, I don't ever think they will become 100% replaced by AI. You will have people who will be needed for complicated questions, for overseeing the bots, for teaching the bots, for compliance purposes, sometimes to take over a conversation when the bot is going rogue. So my anticipation is that we are looking not more than 80% of reduction over time. 20% I think will sort of continue to remain.
So for example, let's assume 1 million people work in India in business outsourcing or business processing outsourcing units, right? BPOs as we call it. So you think only 20% of them will be left after some period in time?
That is correct.
So a lot of job reduction by AI.
Lot of job reduction by AI. I mean, that is somebody basically said that you will not lose your job to AI. You will lose your job to somebody who's going to use AI. And I think that's kind of true. But I'm actually pretty excited about the future. It's not at all, some amount of reskilling is required. Some amount of soul searching is required by everyone. because a new tech is upon us. But suddenly, I don't know if you've noticed, there is a new wave of engineers who are now being called for, which is called vibe coders.
Yeah.
And the good news is that vibe coders don't actually have to be engineers. They don't have to be computer science. You don't need to know how a CPU works to be a vibe coder. So actually, all of us can be vibe coders. So and then vibe coding is actually so much in demand right now. You may have seen that Zuckerberg is paying $100 million packages to
Yeah.
poach people from OpenAI and things like that. Of course, that's for research. So there will be reskilling. There will be new opportunities that will open up. So I anticipate that there's going to be a massive demand in data annotation and data labeling services. You may have noticed that again Zuckerberg paid almost $30 billion, if I'm not wrong, for a company called Scale AI.
Yes.
There's going to be eval services. How do I know if my bot is working fine or not? There's going to be LLM ops. There's going to be infosec on LLMs. So there's going to be a whole new variety of software stack, AI stack that is going to get generated, and so different kinds of skills will be required. So it's all going to be exciting.
And how much do you think this global market is being captured by India in the things that you mentioned?
So I don't know about global market being captured by India, because as you know, there isn't a lot of foundational AI work that's happening in India today. Of course, that's fast changing, but I also think that it may be practically impossible for the global AI players to capture the India AI market as well.
Why?
So, you see, if you roughly do the math, I told you that my anticipation is that we should be offering AI, in this case, I'm talking about voice AI, at about 2 rupees a minute. I think this is the rate at which the Indian businesses will be able to actually purchase. Now, while it is practically possible to offer a 2 rupees a minute even today, actually there is zero margin left for the vendors at this rate. So now you're expecting at least 40% margin on top of it, right? But even at the current inference costs, I think that the savings in the West is so high that there is actually no motivation for American companies to further reduce inference costs going forward. So I think they're going to just forget about this cost problem, and then they'll move on to AGI and I don't know whatever else that they are focused on. So about a couple of weeks ago, I wrote on LinkedIn that I do believe that India's time in AI is now. I think it has arrived. It is arriving, and it is not the kind of AI work that we think. It's not. So mostly people are obsessed with where is India's LLM, where is India's ChatGPT. This is how people are sort of thinking about it. But I think the real AI challenge in India is how do you deliver 2 rupees a minute in the case of voice AI, and the same is applicable for images, same is applicable for chat, for cancer research, everything, right? How do you offer 2 rupees a minute voice AI at 40% margin, and the AI should be able to speak 30 languages simultaneously very well? I think this is a real challenge. This is a uniquely Indian challenge. And this problem, I think India is going to have to solve for itself. And hence, I believe India's AI time is now.
I think global companies have distribution advantage. I'll tell you a case study. Perplexity offered is 1 year Perplexity free for all Airtel users. And Airtel has 360 million users in India. So today, Perplexity is the number 1 app on the App Store, right, ahead of OpenAI.
Correct.
So global players have that kind of distribution advantages in terms
So
of
no, actually,
partnership.
by the way, I'm only bringing in B2B perspective
Yeah.
here. So I'm not tracking B2C side of AI that much. So I don't know what's going to happen to search and things like that. But on the B2B side, actually, whatever I'm saying is going to be true. My sense is that the innovation is going to be keeping the quality of AI intact and then further dropping the inference costs.
Okay.
And be able to do this in 30 more languages very well. I think this is the AI challenge for India, and I think the B2B AI challenge for India, if you will.
Yeah. And one interesting thing that I observe is that you have always been focused and been bullish about the India market. You kept on building for it, right? And now you see the result, like $65 million of ARR, which is completely opposite to what is getting preached in the Indian ecosystem, that go to the West.
Correct.
Your first customer should come from the US. How do you, drill down this model to entrepreneur that India you can build a 65 million ARR company?
By the way, I don't actually recommend that anybody else should do it because due to a weird set of circumstances, I ended up in this, or Exotel ended up in this position. I'll tell you what I mean. So the first one is actually I started roughly around the same time when Girish also started Freshworks. So what is now, of course, being called as the Freshworks playbook is what I also had in mind when I started. Although at the back of my mind, when I started the company, I said, hey, I want to serve the Indian market. I want to serve the society around me. These were the energies with which, of course, I started. And then in a very unique Indian problem, of course, is calls. And so I sort of stumbled upon that problem. And I asked myself, if computing can move to the cloud, can communication not move to the cloud? So these were the initial hypothesis questions that I was asking when I started. Now, it so happens that the Indian telco architecture is actually quite different from the rest of the world. And so when we ended up solving for the India architecture, it's not directly replicable rest of the world. So A, it is different, and B, there was no economies of scale in the architecture that we had solved for in the US or somewhere else. So, and also Indians talk a lot due to various reasons. I would imagine that India probably makes per capita more phone calls than anybody else in the world. For various reasons, right? There's cheapest telco minute in the world, vernacular problems, language problems. There's only so much English people know how to read and write. So I think these are all the reasons. So for these reasons, Indians may end up making a lot many more phone calls. And so it's a real problem here. Companies want to reach people on phone calls. And so it's a very uniquely Indian problem. This is not the case, for example, in Saudi Arabia or in the US, where it is mostly customer service calls, inbound calls. There isn't a lot of sales that happens on calls and things like that. So the applicability of the solution also now sort of is not that big as it is in India. So I think for these various reasons, it ended up playing out the way it did for us. I also think that if you're building CRM, if you're building SaaS, if you're building software, you should go to the US. In fact, one could also argue that if you're building AI, you should go to the US as well. But our base is here. We have existing distribution. We have relationships. So when we are building AI, we are now saying, how do we build AI for India? Just building on top of what we already have.
And why didn't in Exotel journey you ever thought of expanding to the US market or European market?
For the same two, so a couple of reasons, right? One, the architecture, our strength, our core strength is not necessarily replicable in the US. So the architecture in the US is different. So some of the scale modes, the regulatory modes, the economies of scale that we had here, you can't like just take the software and put it there and then, I mean, you can do it, but anybody else can also do it. And they are doing it there should be about a dozen companies in the voice space in the US.
Twilio being the leader.
And so I never really found a reason what exactly. In fact, the real thing is that I was actually quite impressed and inspired by Twilio. In fact, as a tribute to Twilio, I hadn't even told any of my colleagues this. So I actually wore Twilio's socks when I went for the 14th. So we celebrated our 14th foundation day as a few weeks ago. So I was very inspired by the Twilio's work at that point in time. So anyhow, these were the reasons why we felt like there was no real angle. Now, one thing led to another. So we just became larger and larger in India. So now, every once in a while, I will now go to the US, spend a couple of weeks in the Valley. Then there'll be a couple of ideas. I'll come back, but somehow it just never really takes off. So.
And what is the distribution of revenue between India and the other geographies that Exotel is present in today?
80-20. So about 20% of our revenues comes from Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa. Okay. So we focus a lot on emerging markets. Our business in emerging markets is growing faster than our India business.
And what is your thought process on listing on India markets? Because suddenly in the last 3-4 years, India has become one of the most attractive markets globally for listing. And a lot of companies are now flipping back. Let's say MoEngage is flipping back. CleverTap is flipping back. Capillary just flipped back and has already filed the DRHP.
So this is one of the things that actually played out to our. We were lucky that I always started in India. I always wanted to be in India, stayed in India, and so I don't have to spend any money to flip back to India. So we are fortunate that way. So no, it's a great time to be in India. Markets are growing very well. Money is flowing in. Liquidity is there. Backers are there. Indian investors have understood what it means to support software businesses. So it's a great time to list. I think that time will come for Exotel also. We are a very unique company, like I said. Very hard to replicate. No one's going to. It's not an easy business to just start off and then compete with Exotel. So I feel like companies like Exotel deserves to be public.
Yeah.
And
for retail investors to share the gain.
Correct. It needs to be a long-lasting institution. So I don't think of it as much as what it means to me to go public as much as I just feel like Exotel is one of those assets that deserves to be public. So we will take it public. So I think the growth story is, look, I think the Exotel's growth story is there is a lot of stuff to happen over time. I think we are in the first 2 to 3 years of 20-year mega cycle of AI. So it's imperative that Exotel executes AI really well, which hopefully we will. And if that happens, 30% growth should happen. We should be seeing 30% growth for a long, long time. So I don't think that we need to hurry into taking the company public anytime soon. In fact, I would even argue that on behalf of the retail investors, we have to be careful. We shouldn't be taking companies that are in the pivot zone and then give it in the hands of retail investors, because if it doesn't play out the way we think it is, then it's not good for them. So I'm trying to be a little bit more careful about timing this. And secondly, internally also we have to be ready. Our internal financial controls have to be ready. Our ability to behave like a long-lasting institution, and which is one of the things that I'm working on right now. How does Exotel operate, even if Shivku doesn't land up, even if Sachin doesn't land up, even if Ishwar doesn't land up? So this is another question that I'm working on for the last almost a year or so, institutionalizing the company. So these are the things that creates long-lasting institutions. So I think it'll take about 2 to 3 years for us to finish all of this. So,
and what did you mean by, you said we are in a 20-year AI cycle? Like, why? What is the AI cycle, and what does this 20-year period mean?
So, I mean, I used 20 years a little bit loosely, but if you think about any transformative technology, and when I say transformation, what I mean is technologies that will, increase revenue, decrease cost, improve CX, reduce risk, technologies that impact in multiple different ways simultaneously at the same time. These are very rare. Internet is one such. Smartphones is one such. Laptop is one such. Of course, AI is one such. So what is the benefit of, for example, smartphones? Can it reduce cost? Of course, it reduces cost. You can now communicate with whomever you want. So it has like wide-reaching impacts. In fact, so much so that it is actually difficult to quantify exactly how much is the impact of smartphones. Right? It's just such a revolutionary technology. AI is one of those things. And then usually these transformative technologies play out over a long period of time. Just to try to take your mind back to when the smartphones were started off. Do you remember that Nokia? It was like this red brick sort of a thing. And then I think my mama used to pay about 1 rupee 60 paisa for incoming calls at that point in time, right? Now you take your iPhone and then you compare with that phone. It's taken us 20 years. And now one feels like smartphones are saturated. Everybody has it. There's no new innovation possible, isn't it? So I think this is a 20-year mega cycle that I'm sort of speaking about. In the case of AI, right now people are getting obviously quite excited about what they are seeing. But the reality is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Nobody could have guessed how you are going to watch movies, how you are going to watch cricket, how you are going to listen to music, looking at that Nokia brick phone. So similarly, I would wager that you and I have no idea what AI is going to do to us, both positive and negative, sitting here. We are just seeing the first 2-3 use cases. Of course, search is, everybody is using that already. Coding is another large use case that's come up. Voicebots, these are all some use cases that we currently know about. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. And then we are obviously seeing the trailers of what is about to come. You must have seen Tesla Optimus. Now you obviously take ChatGPT and hook it up into a Tesla Optimus. It has hands and legs. So it can now start doing things for you. Then full self-driving is another thing that we are seeing. So I think things will sort of continue to evolve. They will keep cranking away towards AGI. So all of this will play out over time, and there will be newer use cases that you and I are not able to imagine today. So that's the 20-year AI mega cycle.
And you also, during our conversations mentioned that, today almost 80% of the Exotel revenue comes through enterprise and 20% through SMB. But when you had started Exotel for a long period of time, you were a SMB first company. So what had to change, and how did you change the DNA of a company to become enterprise first?
Absolutely. So it was actually a long transformation. It didn't happen overnight. So we had to change the way we think about sales. There was a point in time when I said nobody will go and meet a customer.
Why is that?
Because we are an SMB company, right? So we cannot afford to now send salespeople to go and meet a customer. So we said everything is going to be remote. Everything is going to be self-serve. Everything will be inbound and content. And then, of course, I had to contradict myself once we started becoming enterprise. So then we had to now, first of all, hire salespeople. We have to change the culture. Then I myself had to go and tell them, hey, don't come to office. We go and meet customers, right? So the complete flip-flop. Enterprises buy very differently. They take much longer. Very important, you get InfoSec correctly. The quality of the product is very different. They are not really interested in self-serve, how quickly you go live, but they are very interested in how stable the product is, how secure the product is. Somebody's job is at stake, so they're not going to take that purchase very lightly. These are large purchases. So our product development has to change. Our engineering mindset has to change. Actually, everything has to change. We had to now bring in a delivery team, a professional services team. There has to be paid support. There has to be on-site support. There has to be resident engineers. So we did all of that. And then it's not an overnight journey. We took, in fact, I would even argue that we are still in that process. I think we are there maybe 70, 80%. We are not there yet fully. But it's taken us maybe a good 4 years, 5 years to actually go from SMB company. Actually, we did this transformation in 3 steps really. First was the SMB company, long tail, what we now call as our scale-ups business. Then we actually ended up becoming startup focused or digital natives focused, which also is sort of like quasi-enterprise because we're still talking about Flipkart and Swiggy, and these are not small companies. And then there is the HDFC Bank and the SBI, which is a completely different ballgame altogether. I think this is the journey that we sort of went, and it's still happening if you ask me.
Do you advise founders to go from SMB to enterprise? Because SMBs are the easiest to crack. And maybe you can share, right? Enterprise take like 1 year to go from conversation to a contract.
That's right. It is easier to start from SMB and then migrate gradually over to enterprise. So this is a very interesting conversation. So I'll say a few things. First of all, in almost all markets, more so in India, 80% of the value of that market lies in the top 500 companies. So you may try all you want. Actually, volumes will be high, churn will be high, but you'll never be able to scale beyond a point. And that's exactly what happened to our scale-ups business. So frankly, I think as the company becomes larger, you don't have a choice but to go towards enterprise. Even more so in India focus, actually. And I think the distribution of wealth is slightly better in the US, even more better in China, but in India, it's even more skewed. So you have to be top heavy. So this is point number 1. Point number 2, it's not easy to just stand up one day and say, I'm going to start a company and go to SBI. They're not going to entertain you. So it may make sense for you to actually build out the product for SMBs and then gradually go to mid-market and then gradually start off, go to enterprise. This may actually be the way to do it. This is exactly what Exotel did. And so what I'm now implying, I don't know if you already picked it up. So because of our enterprise focus, we actually now have left a lot of open space in SMB. And so if you are now thinking about getting into our space, actually the way to attack Exotel is to start with SMB and then grow up. And then the cycle just keeps on continuing. So as companies start and then they go up market and then new companies come and then again they go up market. And I think this is the cycle of life.
Yeah. But do you think there's enough space for founders or learning for founders that they can start day zero enterprise first?
There are a few examples. Cogno AI is itself a great example. And the way I think it happens is many of these enterprises also know that unlike 10, 15 years ago, that startups actually sometimes build cutting edge tech. So they do have a department, some processes that they encourage to go and work with startups and try. And that might be your angle, which is what Cogno AI did so beautifully to sort of reach out. And so I think what you want to do is to be able to give great service, build cutting edge technology and offer it really cheap. And then this makes it very easy for enterprises, especially through the startup programs, to really take notice of what you're building.
So Shivku, what I keep on observing from your journey and learning from your journey, it's not a typical startup journey that like started from zero and scaled, right? Uh, uh, do you think like uh, uh, there are certain things in this journey which you can give to other founders that hey, don't do this, do it like this, especially maybe in B2B software?
Sure. So, see, actually, it's a little difficult to generically give advice because I firmly believe that advice has to be strictly personal because the context and where the person is all very different. So, I'm mindful of that. So, I think the audience also should be mindful of that. But I can say that market and timing is probably very important, much more important than how good of an entrepreneur you are. I think you might be the best entrepreneur in the country, but if you are working in a small TAM or if you're starting 5 years too early, there's just nothing you can do about it. So I think the key skill then would be to predict the future, preferably ahead of everybody else, but not too ahead, which is what I think you should call as timing, and the ability to sense what is going to be very large and what is not. For example, Web3 sort of fell flat. We'll see what happens to AI. My guess is it won't fall flat. It adds real value. So all the people who spent years on with Web3, I think it's sort of like time wasted, right? So of course, there are some aspects of Web3 that will stay along, but generally, you know what I mean, right? So I think timing and ability to perceive the market ahead of time, I think these are the two underrated but very important skills. A lot of people talk about perseverance, grit, intelligence, resourcefulness, hustle. All of these are important, but I think far more important, I think, will be timing and sensing the market. I would also now say that there are two ways to look at my journey. One is to say, hey, I've stood my ground for 14 years, so perseverance, grit, resilience. These are the things mostly people associate with me and my story rather. But then one could also argue that are there ways in which I could have saved time? Could I have now started much later and nothing would have made any difference? Like I could have started Exotel 5 years later, or could I have sold the company when we were growing 40-50% year on year, and could I have now started something else? So these are all the other ways to think about life as well. And I do think about some of these things once in a while. But the truth is I'm actually in a good place. I think 99% of the companies would have died by the time they are 14 years old.
Yeah.
So, but Exotel is still here. We're still profitable. We're still making money. So, my heart is filled with gratitude for all of that. But along the way, I have made several mistakes, strategic errors that possibly could be avoided. But then again, there's no way for you to know what these errors are before they actually hit on you. There are some basic rules. You should get your business design good. You should get your unit economics well. You should be clear about your GTM model. You should think about risks ahead of time. You should think about your branding and positioning well. And you should think about building great products. Your UX must be great. Use the latest stack for building tech. Don't leave too much tech debt for too long. So these are some basic principles, and I can maybe give you like 15-20 of these things that I think everybody can be aware of. But the problem is when the rubber hits the road, if there are 15 things, what do you focus on, right? So this becomes problematic. So then you have to hire the right people, you have to build the right culture. What exactly is right culture? Sometimes it is better to focus on what's happening today. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes it is better to do what the customer is asking you to do. Sometimes it is not. So I think what overall, I think in my journey as an entrepreneur, and by the way, some people get this very naturally. I do feel that there are some communities where I think they breathe business, and it is, I think, a skill, just like learning a cycle. And for some of us, I'm not from a business community, and so it doesn't, like, my father has never ever spoken to me about money. He's spoken to me a lot about education. He's spoken to me a lot about various other things in life, but our dinner time conversations have never been about money. So unfortunately, everything that I have to learn about money, I have to learn it by myself. Maybe he didn't know a lot about money. I don't know why he didn't speak. So he's no more. So I don't know. So for some communities, for some people, it comes quite naturally. Just like how you might be pretty good with coding, or you might be pretty good with dancing, etc. But for some of us, we'll have to learn it the hard way, make mistakes, and then iterate and things like that. So I actually belong to that category. I just followed my dream. I wanted to start a company, so I started a company. So that's all I knew at that point in time, and everything else I kind of learned along the way. So I'm not even like an MBA. So I'm just a coder, technically a product manager, if you will. So I think these are some broad thoughts around thinking about. I think broadly it is not. It is just a skill. Actually, making money is just a skill. People make too much out of it. Is one of those things. Once you know how to ride a cycle, you don't think about how to ride a cycle, right? So in that sense, makers of money or people who add value, they just have the skill of how to add value and how to spot trends. Everybody else has to learn it. The faster you learn it, the better.
You know what you have done, I think, for the Indian ecosystem is amazing. Like, you have shown founders that a playbook that, hey, India for India software exists. And I think you might be among the top 10 or 15 companies which are just focused from India to India market.
Absolutely. I would say even lesser. I'd say the top 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you still think, do you want to break this narrative for anyone that, hey, there's a market, large market in India in other domains as well? Let's say if you go out to solve for banks, in other domains.
So one has to be picky and choosy about the markets. So there are some markets that are uniquely large in India, but is not very large elsewhere. If you land up in those kinds of market, I think India is a great. I mean, obviously the market is only here, so you don't have a choice but to do it here. So I think that'll be a good. So telco is one of those things, right? So like I said, due to a number of reasons, 10 years ago there were almost 13 telcos in India. The per minute rate was the cheapest in the world, and the number of people who had a phone was highest in the world. And then the number of phone calls that they were making per day was the highest in the world, right? So what better place to start a telco-ish business than India?
Yeah.
So you'll have to find such markets. Now, if you actually take this idea and go to a country where, let's say, the call rates are very high, and let's say the calling propensity is very low, and the signal is not that good, and then you try to replicate this, is going to go nowhere. So what are those kinds of market segments in India that is uniquely India specific? So I'm thinking data annotation for AI is one of those things, right? So where I feel like actually the labor is very cheap here. You know, people have multiple languages. They know a lot of languages. The BPO people already know foreign languages also. So it should be possible for us to recreate a good AI data annotation, data labeling company out of India. So this is another example that sort of comes in my mind. And so I think one has to think through what markets exist that is uniquely Indian and solve for that.
And I think you described it earlier very beautifully that, hey, 80% of all value captured in India is among the top 500 companies.
Correct.
In India.
Absolutely.
And today I assume Exotel would serve like 100 of them at least.
More. I think we have a total of about 200-ish odd enterprise customers now.
Okay.
So about half of the top Fortune 500 will be Exotel's customers.
In India. Right. And the more as a founder, if you're operating in software, you start thinking on that frameworks that ultimately all the money is going to be made among those 500.
That is correct. Absolutely.
And you have proven that these guys now paid. Earlier the narrative was enterprises make you a services company and make you laborers of the services company, because India is not used to paying for software products.
I agree. Changed. Actually, it is absolutely possible for us to build an enterprise software company focused in India to begin with, at least. I think these enterprises are also now trying to compete. Our enterprises are trying to compete in a global stage as well. So think of Tata Motors, or think of Bajaj Finserv, and these are all like fabulous companies. So absolutely, I think you can totally build an enterprise business in India starting now.
And would you argue that the market has moved away from price sensitivity to quality sensitive?
No, not at all. So I believe that will happen when the India per capita GDP crosses $15,000. Right now, I believe
20 years away.
Yeah, I think we are one generation away. So India is a price-sensitive market. You have to do cost innovation. I'm connecting this back to the AI part that I was there. So I think cost innovation in AI is a game that we will play very well. Another 20 years, one generation later, I think the India market will not be price sensitive. And right now they are price sensitive for a good reason, because ultimately the end user is price sensitive, right? So the average Indian on the road wants a bargain, wants a good deal.
Yeah.
So the companies that are serving them also will want a good deal. So.
Yeah. Well, obviously then the software companies that have to make big in India, they have to build it in such a way that
Correct.
they deliver that kind of a value
Correct.
with the price sensitivity in mind.
Correct. And then the good news is that people from outside can't do this. So actually the market is easy to grab if you really put your mind to it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shivku. This has been such an amazing conversation, very different from the one we had last. A lot of the previous conversation was a lot of centered around your journey as an entrepreneur. This conversation has been what happened in Exotel post-COVID, and some of the key lessons in scaling that you learned over a period of time as an entrepreneur.
I thoroughly enjoy this conversation as well. So it just, I can't believe that we've been speaking for over an hour now. Thanks for inviting me, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Shivku.